Welcome back into the Champions Journey. I am Cory McCartney. As we continue our week-long look at the intersection of sports and technology, I talked to Scott McMeekin from PlaySight, the AI-powered production company that uses connected camera systems to broadcast without a traditional broadcast crew. Be sure to check back all week long as we continue the Champions Journey. Now, here's my conversation with PlaySight's Scott McMeekin. I am now joined by Scott McMeekin, PlaySight VP of Sales for North America. Scott, good to see you.
Great to see you, Corey.
Now, PlaySight brings smart sports AI video technology to any level and every sport via desktop and mobile. It's obviously something that's an integral part of business at LakePoint Sports. But Scott, give me that elevator pitch on how PlaySight's changing the game.
Yeah, I tell you what, we're all about connecting sports to in rinks, fields, courts to the internet. And as you know, once they're connected, fans, parents, coaches, recruiters can all access the content. And LakePoint's, certainly at the forefront of that, driving content with LakePoint Live.
Now, PlaySight affords users the ability to live stream in real time with multiple angles, cut their own highlights. Basically, as you mentioned, connecting the likes of athletes, family members, scouts, recruiters. I know the company has a global footprint. It's kind of a fun exercise to go to the global smart court locator map on PlaySight.com and see how far reaching it is. How long has it taken PlaySight to get that level of reach in the market?
Yeah, I tell you, since 2013, they've been adding smart courts throughout really the world, and it's to a point now where you can take a tennis racket and fly to a city and look up, where's that smart court in your area. Pretty fun exercise. So they've been going at it, and certainly in the recent years, adding places like LakePoint and IMG, and working with about half the NBA now, which you can't get on those courts, unfortunately. It's really exploded to where most cities in North America have some basketball, some tennis, and then more recently quite a bit of baseball and hockey, where you can connect, and as an athlete you can go on court and see yourself on video, and in my case realize how slow you are, how maybe old you are, but in the case of a lot of people at LakePoint, really see what you're doing well, and maybe see some things that you might work on.
Headquartered in Israel, when did that move come, as far as you were aware of, to get a inroad into the United States?
So I've been with the company a little over 3 years now, and I know they were at it for a couple years before I joined. So my guess is they've been in the U.S. Going on about 5 years, and we really made our start in tennis, and are at some pretty incredible country clubs and racket clubs. And then facilities like the USTA down in Orlando, and then got into basketball probably about that 4 or 5 year mark as well. Did quite a bit of work with the NBA level that I mentioned, and then also at the D1 college level, certainly in tennis, and then in basketball. And then in the last handful of years, baseball, certainly starting with LakePoint as a showcase. We work with places like USA Baseball and St. Louis Cardinals, and we've got kind of a unique approach to it that is nice from a sales perspective, where you get to start with the pro level teams, get that validation, and then you're able to bring those into facilities and colleges and high schools and really youth. So there's nothing better than hopping on a field like you have at LakePoint, where you got 7 cameras on a field. I think it's even more than our MLB teams tend to have. So.
In terms of your involvement with PlaySight, when was that moment that you felt that things were really clicking, or that you guys had got to the point where it's like, okay, this thing's about to really take off?
It really started when I joined, and not so much for me, but that's when I really felt, the company was expanding into different sports, the trajectory and the brands that we were having an opportunity to work with. And then personally, even coming up to LakePoint and getting on the field with Mark and cutting some highlights and, showing, having fun with it. And that's when it really kind of came home that, hey, this is a real chance to impact, some athletes, and, probably jump into a question coming up, but it's been interesting with COVID. It has really helped these kids get looked that they might not have gotten before. And I think it's also helped a lot of these college recruiters, and in MLB for that matter, that can't travel, still get to see the content that you put out, just incredibly every day.
At its baseline, let's talk about how PlaySight works. I mean, at LakePoint, you had mentioned there's cameras throughout the Champion Center. Each field at the baseball village has users be able to watch from multiple angles. There's live games, there's on-demand games. You can watch on web, you can watch on mobile, and obviously there's the smart court technology itself. So, how does this happen without the traditional broadcast for a user to get that experience via PlaySight?
Yeah, so there is from a basketball perspective, there is a camera that actually tracks the action, and so the players and the play is going up and down the court or the ice, and it's following the movement. It's uncontrolled. It's unmanned camera that's up in the ceiling. And then more recently, you've seen this in baseball at LakePoint. We're actually live streaming from multiple angles. So a typical MLB production, you can see a center field view, and then you can see a high home view. We now have the ability to live stream those angles and let the user pick which angle they want. I had another customer recently. They're live streaming high home, but it's a right-handed pitcher. They're also live streaming the third base because they want that scout to be able to see, from the open side. And so that's been a real trend where the consumer is able to control which angles they want to see. And, with the, up to however many events that are done every year, I think it's incredible. It's every weekend up at LakePoint, the hundreds of games. It's something that you can scale. And so the ability to record, not have the production costs that you would have with the typical production company. It allows you to do games. It also allows you to record practices. So what happens a lot in producing these events, it's so costly that you can't actually turn the camera on for practice. And so the unmanned is really a way to scale that. And that's where I think, the future's going. We have had some experiences as well where we do bring in a production company. In the case, we brought in a production company, or LakePoint brought in a production company for the recent area code games. And they were able to not only set up their own cameras, their own commercials, but also tap into some existing cameras. And so you have almost a semi-automatic production at that point.
You kind of mentioned this a little bit. Obviously, COVID-19 and kind of steps that have been made have allowed you guys to kind of expand the applications for PlaySight. But you think about family members watching from afar, colleges checking in on a player, scouts. One interesting area I think is in player development. How have you witnessed teams and organizations be able to utilize PlaySight to help make their athletes better?
It's certainly from a pro level perspective, whether it's the Cardinals we work with or the Atlanta Hawks here locally, they're buying the technology for player development primarily. They have live streaming figured out. So certainly the majority of our pro level customers are using it for player development. I'm seeing quite a bit, from a recruiter perspective, where high schools are taking the content and using the multiple angles to, one, improve their athletes, but also use it to show it off to potential colleges. The ability to slow it down, I got on a tennis court myself, and one, I looked pretty bad, but two, I could realize really quickly what I was doing wrong, and try it again. And so, instant replay, we see it largely in live sports, but I think instant replay is really helpful as well from player development. So if I make a pitch or make a swing, the ability to go over to a tablet right away and back up 10 seconds, back up 1 minute, watch what I just did, and then do it again is really valuable. On the side, I'm a USA hockey coach, and it doesn't matter how many times I tell a player where they should be. It never completely sinks in until they see video sometimes. And then they really quickly, oh, I see what you mean. I need to be here and not here. So, video from a real-time feedback, I think it's a really powerful tool, more so than, kind of the traditional ways that we've always done it with dry erase boards and all kinds of gimmicks.
certainly we're talking about the intersection of technology and sports, and that, understanding of technology is a big part of this. But obviously, if you're going to work in sports and have that understanding of what matters to athletes and coaches, it helps to have a passion for sports yourself. So, Scott, where did that passion for sports come from for you?
Yeah, I grew up like maybe a lot of people playing different sports. Grew up watching sports. I played baseball, played certainly tackle football and hockey, et cetera. And then got into coaching, and it was more as my kids got older, I would coach the team that they were on. There's something about a team, and there's something about the dynamics of a team, and maybe not having the best team, but if you came together as a team and you played as a team, you could beat a lot of other teams that maybe were better in a lot of ways, and more skilled, but maybe didn't play as a team. And I always enjoyed sort of the underdog story. And I've had different experiences throughout the years that many other people have, whether rooting for one of those teams or being a part of one of those teams. I think the other thing is, and this is what I love about what we do, athletes and connecting to athletes, and then coaches. You run into a few crazy ones every once in a while, but generally they're really good people that want the best for the game, want the best for their athletes. And so I just love talking to coaches. I love learning from coaches, and they're always looking for that edge to get better and to improve their team. And it's something that it's fun. You do have to walk onto a basketball court and sort of know that lingo and know that language. And then the next day, go to a baseball diamond and know that lingo, and the next day put on some skates. So it does make it kind of fun.
How did that all help just shape your approach to business, whether it's, working with a team, an actual team, or working with a team within PlaySight?
Yeah, it's sports keeps score. There's runs, and there's a scoreboard. And in the world of sales, there's a scoreboard. It's very specific. Did you hit your number or not? So from just keeping score and where do you really stand, that was something that assuming you're ahead of your number, I always was able to relate to it as winning. It's competitive. You can get the juices going on a sales call, in a lot of ways similar to a game. You've got your preparation for the event. You've got the actual event. You have the follow-up. You have the second game sometimes. And so there's a lot of similarities. There's been a lot of books and certainly movies, whether it's Moneyball or, any of the other ones we could quote all day long, the connection between sales and sports. But it's, PlaySight and certainly LakePoint have been just a lot of fun to be a part of. And, sometimes I come home and I can't tell my wife, what I did that day, because I was hanging out on the baseball field. And it doesn't sound like work to some people. We were working really hard, but we were on a baseball field. So it's, you get to see a lot of things.
Well, you can find out more about PlaySight at playsight.com, or follow them across social media at PlaySight. Scott, thank you so much for the time.
Appreciate it, Cory. Take care.